The Boston Bruins opening night roster has been set. Is there a chance that Jeremy Swayman could start tonight against the Florida Panthers?
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Tuesday, October 8th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And before we get started, breaking down the Bruins opening night roster, the possibility of Jeremy Swayman playing tonight against the Panthers, and assessing the over-under for this team, expectations. A quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. Bessie is so excited about opening night that she is jumping on the podcast here this morning. And we have a roster set for tonight. The Bruins announcing it yesterday after the 5 p.m. deadline to set your rosters. And there's a couple surprises here. One, Koepke and Riley Tufte are on the opening night roster. This is because Matt Poitras was designated as injured, so he will not be in the opening night lineup, unfortunately, as he deals with an undisclosed injury and remains day-to-day. Ian Mitchell, Alec Regula, also listed as injured. Also, you'll note that Tyler Johnson was not given a contract yet. It's reported that he is not on the trip with the team to Florida. And we might be looking at a Danton Heinen situation here where he remains with the team as he awaits a contract that could be signed, well, anytime now. If you look at the current roster, there is a certain lack of scoring ability here. Yes, Max Jones, Riley Tufte, Cole Koepke, Marcus Stelic, Justin Brazeau, they bring size to the lineup, some added grit and tenacity. But there's a real question here as to who is going to provide the lion's share of the scoring behind David Pastrnak. We all know Brad Marchand still has so much left, and he was the team's second leading scorer last year. Charlie Coyle, Pavel Zacha had career seasons, but the Bruins lost Jake DeBrusk. They lost Heinen. James Van Riemsdyk is gone. Even he provided some pop, especially early on. A lot of guys are going to be called upon to step up the offensive contributions here on this roster. Trent Frederick, I'm looking at you. It's a contract year. He's going to need to up his production. Johnny Beecher, yes, he'll be playing more in a fourth line role, but he's going to be called upon to contribute more offensively. Morgan Geekie, if he's playing on that second line right wing spot, he's going to have to score as well. They made the decision not to have Fabian Lysell on the main roster. He's got more offensive potential than many of these players on the roster right now, but not quite NHL game ready in terms of his 200-foot game, apparently. Tyler Johnson showed some pop in the preseason, scoring a very nice power play goal. Would I rather have him in the lineup than Tufte or Koepke? Yeah, probably. I'm not sure what the holdup is, why they didn't just send one of these guys down and sign Tyler Johnson. Just give him 900,000 reasons, or even the league minimum, 775,000 reasons to sign with the Bruins. Hopefully at some point that does indeed come to pass, because he accepted the PTO. He came in, he performed well, and I think he can add some more offense on a cheap contract than some of these other guys can. Now on the back end, no surprises there. Brandon Carlo, Hampus Lindholm, Mason Lohrei, Charlie McAvoy, Andrew Peeke, and Nikita Zadorov. That's your top 6, with Parker Witherspoon as your 7th defenseman. Goaltenders, Joonas Korpisalo and Jeremy Swayman. When it comes to line combinations for tonight's game against the Panthers, no surprises. The top line, Pavel Zacha, Elias Lindholm, David Pastrnak. We're going to have Marchand, Coyle, and Geekie. Jones, Frederick, Brazeau, and then Beecher, Kostelic, Koepke, with Riley Tufte serving as your extra man, it seems like. Now, I might have had Tufte over Koepke. Again, Tufte and Max Jones were both first-round picks back in 2016. They're both some guys who perhaps have not yet met their potentials, and both could become pretty serviceable NHLers for the Boston Bruins this season. You look at, the Bruins didn't have a lot of draft picks or missed on a bunch of picks. It's easy to go back and sign some guys who haven't quite met their potentials elsewhere and get value out of those first round picks from past years. And that's what they're going to be doing here, or trying to do, with Jones and Tufte. So that's the situation. That's the opening night roster. Unfortunately, Matt Poitras injured, won't be in the lineup to begin the season. That's really tough for him, coming off that shoulder surgery and missing so much time. He would have, I'm sure, liked to have come in guns blazing. Tyler Johnson sitting on the sidelines as he awaits a contract offer. One guy who could be in the lineup sooner than expected is Jeremy Swayman. He practiced with the team yesterday, and head coach Jim Montgomery hinted that he might play tonight against the Florida Panthers. We'll discuss that here as the podcast continues. NFL season is in full swing. Hockey officially begins tonight, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. For example, Boston's over-under for total points this season is set at 97.5. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com, put $5 on the over or the under, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, regardless of the outcome of that bet. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Check out FanDuel.com right now to get started. Now, last Monday, it was announced that Joonas Korpisalo would be the opening night starter, and that was because he had been present all through training camp, and at that time, Jeremy Swayman had yet to sign his 8-year contract extension. Well, cut to yesterday's practice where Jeremy Swayman was back with the team, and head coach Jim Montgomery said Swayman has the potential to be the goalie tonight. They are undecided, he said. It's great to have him back. He has so much great energy. He elevated practice, and he looked sharp. Now, part of that practice was getting a clap of sticks as he was asked to take a lap at the end of practice. The lap was a nod to Swayman's new 8-year contract extension, a sign that his teammates are thrilled to have him back alongside them with the season opener set for tonight in Miami, and also maybe some penance for having missed the entirety of training camp and the preseason. David Pastrnak said he's pretty fast, actually, for a goalie, and he was pretty impressed. Swayman said he was talking to all of his teammates throughout the process, and they said, as soon as you return, it's going to be like nothing ever happened. It's going to be a seamless transition, and that's exactly what it was at practice on Monday. at the Panthers training facility. The Bruins had already flown down to Florida. There was some question as to whether the game was going to take place because of Hurricane Milton bearing down on Florida. It looks as though Miami will be one of the only Florida cities to go relatively unscathed. So full steam ahead for this game tonight, with the possibility that Swayman could be the starter. After that skate, Swayman said they all started chanting, clapping their sticks. You know what that means. It was a welcome back. No hard feelings for missing training camp, or just that they're excited to have him back. Swayman said he's excited about where he is physically, saying he feels ready to get right back into game action. And again, Montgomery was also very impressed with how he looked during practice, and said the team's undecided whether they'll go with Swayman or Korpisalo. Kind of unfair to Korpisalo in some ways. It was announced publicly last week he'd be the opening night starter. He's had that mindset, but obviously he knows that he is the backup to Swayman at this point because of this big contract, Swayman's status with the team, and I'm sure he'll take that in stride if, in fact, Swayman gets the call tonight. His job is to be the backup, to be a support to Swayman, to be a good teammate, and to understand that Swayman's going to get the Lions' share of the starts here. He's not in any position to get pouty about it, and I'm sure he won't. Swayman has been training with the Boston University men's team, staying sharp along with Jay Pandolfo over there, former Bruin. He said he feels ready to play. He put himself in the position to miss training camp, but he had a great training sessions over at BU, and he feels like he's in a good position to perform whenever his name is called. And he's hoping it's tonight. He said he would love that. It's up to the coaching staff, obviously, Jim Montgomery and goalie coach Bob Essensa, but he trusts them completely. And when he's ready, he'll be in there putting up his best effort. And he's the guy that's earning 8.25, so a lot is expected of him. You know, he didn't hold out. He was without a contract. But he stood his ground, felt he deserved at least what he's getting on his new deal. And now it's up to him to prove to everyone that he is worth every penny of this. Not that he has to be perfect per se, but maintaining one of the top save percentages in the NHL. He said he feels like the luckiest human in the world to be in the position he's in. The gratitude is just pouring from everywhere. He knows what kind of trust the Bruins have in him and the expectations they have, and he has the same, if not more, expectation to perform. Let everyone know that they made the right decision. He loves being in this position, and he could not be happier. He's a guy that rises to the challenge, who puts that pressure on himself to perform. And based on what we've seen from Jeremy Swayman to date, there's every reason to believe that he will indeed. Now, when it comes to Matt Poitras, again, he was in a non-contact jersey yesterday. Poitras day-to-day not available for the season opener. On the bottom six, he said they thought Kostelic and Beecher played well through camp together. Koepke had a strong camp, and the line of Frederick, Jones, Brazeau, they're going to be important, big, and heavy for that team. Johnson, not with the team in Florida, and Jim Montgomery said he didn't have much else to say about that. Now, the Bruins, of course, will be opening the season against the Stanley Cup champion Panthers in Florida. The Panthers will be raising the banner tonight. They got their rings last night. David Pastrnak said it's been a long camp. They want to make sure they start on time and keep building the team no matter who they play. The start of the season is important and always has been. They've got to make sure they're ready no matter how long the ceremony is. And that's going to be key, staying fresh amid that ceremony. There's going to be a lot of energy, a lot of emotion in the building. Remains to be seen. Yeah, how full the building will be. I don't begrudge any fans who stay home because of this hurricane that's bearing down on them. But certainly will be an emotional time for the Panthers as they get their banner, and for the Bruins as they see what they missed out on, having lost to the Florida Panthers. There's not much in the way of, stats to go on or season matchup. It's a fresh start for everybody, a clean slate, and I'm hoping the Bruins come out and make a statement against the Panthers tonight that, hey, we're not a team to be pushed around. We're not a team that's going to lie down and just, congratulations, you guys are the Stanley Cup champions. They're going to come out and prove that they are up to the task and can take on the best in the NHL. So I'm pretty excited about this game. Very ready for Boston Bruins hockey, actual hockey, not the preseason games, and looking forward to what this team can accomplish together behind Jeremy Swayman and this improved team defense. I still have some questions about the offense and who's going to score some goals here, and we'll discuss that more when I talk about whether the Bruins will go over or under as the podcast continues. If you're looking to hire, then there's no better place to visit than Indeed. Indeed is the best place to find the highest quality matches for your open positions. You can ditch the busy work and use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with the best candidates faster. They don't just help you hire faster either. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Boston Bruins. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Check out Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. So what are realistic expectations for this team this season? We can all agree that they exceeded expectations over the past two seasons. Obviously, 2 years ago, setting the record for wins and points. Last season, in a transition year after Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci retired, they had 109 points, failing to win the Atlantic by just 1 point at the hands of the Florida Panthers. And that was with James Van Riemsdyk coming in, Danton Heinen coming in, Kevin Shattenkirk, all these guys that were signed to low cap deals to try to help the Bruins navigate this transition period to this season where they were able to add more up front and on the blue line. In come Elias Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov to help shore up the overall team defense, but also, in Lindholm's case, to help improve the offense as well. He's getting the number one center spot alongside Zacha and Pastrnak. And the hope, the expectation is that he will drastically improve from the numbers he posted last year with the Calgary Flames and the Vancouver Canucks. It was a down season for him, and sometimes that happens in a contract year. Sometimes you get the boost, guys go all out and post crazy numbers and earn a contract that's perhaps above what they normally would have earned in a normal year. Sometimes guys struggle because there's that uncertainty of what the future will hold. And then once they sign their new deal, they get situated. They know where they're going to be for the next 7-8 years, and they're put in prime positions to succeed. And that's exactly what they do. And I'm hopeful that Lindholm will be at least the third leading scorer on this team this season behind Pastrnak and Marchand, maybe eclipsing Marchand if he and Pastrnak have some great chemistry there. Again, a big question for this team is going to be the scoring. You look at the forward lines, and you could argue that they have 4 top 6 forwards on the top 2 lines. Charlie Coyle played amazing last season, but he's perhaps best suited for a third line role. Zacha, Lindholm, Pasternak, Marchand. After that, I don't know if Geeky is really up to the task of playing second line right wing all season long. I had Max Jones penciled in on the 4th line, Justin Brazeau as well. It's going to be tough to score for this team, especially with Matt Poitras and his playmaking abilities out of the lineup. I would love to see a lineup with Poitras in there, Tyler Johnson in there. I bet you we will see Fabian Lysell up here at some point. There's very limited cap space to work with in terms of projecting towards the trade deadline and whether they'll be able to add something without subtracting. So this is the group. And it's very legitimate concern to wonder who is going to score beyond the usual suspects. Jake DeBrusk is gone. There's no guy to come in and fill that role. Maybe Trent Frederick comes in and matches his production from last season. Danton Heinen chipped in. Maybe Justin Brazeau takes a next step. Maybe Max Jones busts out and becomes a scorer for this team. But that's my one huge question for the Boston Bruins this season is the scoring and whether or not they have enough offense to offset the defensive improvements that they have made. Getting Jeremy Swayman in there is huge. I do believe they've improved their overall team defense, and their top 6 looks pretty good. The defense up front has been improved with the addition of a Bergeron light player in Lindholm, but that scoring kind of does scare me. But when we look at the over-under, 97.5, that, if you asked me this time last week, I would have said, well, maybe the under, because we don't know about Jeremy Swayman. Now that he's back in the mix, I think we can confidently take the over. Yes, there will be a bit of a drop-off, I believe, because you don't have that 1A, 1B tandem. But if Joonas Korpisalo can be at least an average goaltender in the starts that he makes, it should give the Bruins enough to at least get 100 points once again. The Atlantic is a bit tougher. The Canadiens have improved. The Senators have improved, obviously, with the addition of Ullmark. The Sabres are supposed to have improved, although they dropped a goose egg in those games in Prague. The Red Wings are looking to make the jump as well. So the Atlantic is arguably the toughest division in the NHL, but I still believe the Bruins are a top 3 team there. And will finish probably 3rd in the division behind the Panthers and the Maple Leafs, but I still think they will be over the 97.5. When we get to the playoffs, obviously it's a whole different season. I always like to look at the roster after July 1st on opening night, after the trade deadline, and then at the beginning of the playoffs. They're whole different quadrants there in the NHL calendar. Too early to say, but I think on paper, this team has enough to get the over on that 97.5. We'll get a glimpse at what they're capable of tonight against the Florida Panthers. Again, it will be an emotional night with Florida raising the banner. They'll have to suffer through this ceremony to begin that. But I think they're going to be up for it. And if Swayman is indeed a net, that's obviously a bonus over starting Korpisalo against the defending Stanley Cup champions. That's it for today's episode. My friends, thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Tomorrow, we'll do a full recap of tonight's game, these stats, storylines, signals to take away, and bring you all the latest on the black and gold, because that's what we do here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. For your next listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.